Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us for the second half of episode 170 of Sold with Updike Pugh. Today we have Tammy Farmer. Tammy, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
And Tammy is actually a fixture in our office and does the insurance. And you've been doing insurance for, when we talked just kind of pre-taping, you were telling me you've been in it for like 20 years? That's amazing.
I know.
Has it always been in insurance?
Well, I've either done insurance or banking. I've either managed a bank or I've worked at an insurance agency. So, kind of now they're one and the same, really.
It is interesting. One of the things that you did last week that really caught my attention is you sent out a really informative email to all of the agents, and you were talking about condos, and I thought, that's so important for us to reach out to people, but I think it's also important because right now we're in that season where the market is on fire, and so you have a lot of new clients coming to you, both agents and homeowners, but also the weather's about to shift, as we saw yesterday at 4:30 when it went from 70 to 35.
Yes.
So we wanted to kind of cover some of the basics with you to kind of help our viewers understand like what's really important, and coming at it from a standpoint of a neutral third party, I think is really helpful. And so we wanted to just jump in and talk about what is the difference between replacement costs and purchase.
So,
did I phrase that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
So this is probably one of my most common questions is I'm purchasing a home for $500,000. Why are you insuring it for $450,000?
Yeah.
Well, so first of all, your insurance company is going to insure the house itself, the structure, not the land.
Correct.
So when you're purchasing a house, you're purchasing the land that it sits on as well. So replacement cost would be, if your house burns down today, how much would it cost to replace that house as close to what it looks like now?
Correct.
So whenever I come up with the replacement cost coverage, which is not me, by the way, the company has their own replacement cost estimation tool.
Okay.
And so I look up the home and I look at the details of the home. What kind of countertops it has, laminate versus marble. I mean, that's an expense. That's a big deal. The square footage, what kind of roof it has. How many bathrooms is really a big deal. Not really the bedrooms, but the bathrooms are a big deal. So I put all that in and it tells me how much it would cost today to replace the house. So that's how we get that.
Here's a question. So when that happens, do you usually see the foundation being replaced?
No.
Really? They can work with the foundation that's there?
Yeah, unless it's like pier and beam.
Yeah, then it's gone.
It's gone.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's part of the replacement cost. So we have to look up the type of foundation it has. And so if it's slab, we put slab. If it's pier and beam, we put pier and beam.
And so you would come back if somebody was pier and beam with a pier and beam house? Wow, that's interesting. So what happens if someone gets this coverage with you and say it's 5-10 years down the road and they have never changed the value of the policy? There could be a chance that they're going to be short on the amount of money that they need.
Absolutely.
And how does that work then?
So there's a difference in an actual cash value policy versus a replacement cost policy. And so whenever you're purchasing a home and getting insurance, you want to make sure you have a replacement cost policy. Pretty much every insurance company is going to have like an inflation guard. And so every single year, so when people complain, well, my insurance went up $20. Well, $20 is not that much.
Correct.
So that's probably, if you look at the details of the dwelling amount, then you're going to see the dwelling amount went up a little bit. And that's for the inflation guard pretty much.
Right.
And so whenever you're talking about 10 years down the road, you want to make sure that your policy has an endorsement that is additional replacement cost on the structure.
Okay. And is that something that is typically built into someone's policy, or is it no?
No. That is something.
So is that like when someone gets a policy and it's just super cheap and they're like, can you beat it? And you're like, well, I can beat it, but there's nothing in it.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, you always want to look for certain things in your policy because, you know, your home is one of your biggest assets that you're ever going to purchase. And sometimes people are going to purchase, 5 homes in their lifetime.
Right.
And so if that house burns down, you want to make sure that no matter what the building prices are,
Correct.
you can rebuild that house. There's a reason why you picked that house, and so with those reasons, those are things that you would want to make sure that they're insurable.
Right.
And make sure they're insured. So if you have, I picked this house because it has bay windows and it has skylights. Well, you need to make sure that you tell your insurance agent, whoever writes your insurance, that I want to make sure my skylights are covered. I want to make sure that whenever that you put in there that I have a bay window.
Right. Otherwise,
because when that house burns down, they're going to look at that replacement cost tool because it has details in it, and they're going to say, well, you didn't have bay windows, and so why are you putting bay windows in? So those are important details to make sure that you tell.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so that is, I see how that all begins to make sense now, and how each time a policy is administered, whether it's from like a big company like USAA or if it's a mom and pop, on Northwest Highway, that there can be a lot of discrepancy between what you're quoting and what someone else is. Because I think also we were talking earlier, like the difference between wind, hail, and all perils deductible. And I think that's really important, given that we live in Texas and tornadoes are springtime visitors.
Yes.
So what does all that mean, though?
So this is probably the second thing that I find on whenever I review people's policies is their deductibles. So your deductibles are separate. Like your
Correct.
all peril deductible and your wind and hail are separate deductibles. So a lot of times insurance companies can help lower your premium by increasing the most common claim a homeowner is going to have, which is your hail.
Of course.
And so they'll increase that deductible to make that policy cheaper. So when you're looking in your policy and you're trying to make sure that when you have to replace your roof, because it's inevitable,
right?
A company is going to have to replace a roof at some point in time, due to hail damage, especially in here. And so you want to make sure that your out-of-pocket expense for that is not going to be more than what you can afford or that you want to pay. So you need to make sure that those deductibles are in sync with what you're willing to shell out of pocket.
And I think, again, going back to when you're given one bid, that you need to compare that it's apples to apples, and the other bid that you're getting is the same thing. So one of the other things, kind of in this vein, I remember for a while there, I didn't think that they were writing, what they call them, slow and steady leaks. Is that something that still is not available to homeowners, or is it called something else?
So there's 3 separate things that I make sure that are on every single policy.
3 things.
And I make sure that there is leakage and seepage coverage, which I think is what you're talking about.
Okay.
So if I live in my house for 6 months and I notice that my floor is sagging or I see some water damage and you don't know where it came from, that's leakage and seepage. And so you got to make sure that's covered, because not every homeowner's policy is going to cover that.
Yes.
So it should be added as an endorsement. If it doesn't state it in the policy, then you need to add it.
And I think that is something that, as people are buying houses with more energy efficiency, that insulation can get so thick that it'll absorb it like a sponge.
Yes.
And you don't know it until the
6
wall
months
is so
down the
heavy and
road,
it kinda
probably.
tumps over. So
Exactly.
that is.
Yep.
What was the other? That was one, right?
That's one. And so water damage and leakage and seepage are 2 different things.
Okay.
So water would be the other one. Water damage. So if you have let's just say last February when we had, Ice-mageddon or whatever they called it. If your pipes burst because they froze and you don't have water damage, it wasn't covered. So all these people out here that didn't have that in their policy and they didn't know that it didn't cover it, they were out that money. And so water damage, so if your pipe freezes and it bursts and it damages the sheetrock, the floor, whatever, if you have water damage, then it's going to cover up to the limit. So you need to make sure that you are aware what limits that it has. A basic starts out between $5,000 and $10,000 is the minimum.
Interesting.
If the company even offers it. Some companies don't offer it.
Really? And hence it's cheaper.
That's right.
And what was the third thing that you?
The third thing is water foundation. And that is so if your pipe bursts and they have to dig into that foundation to replace that pipe, if you don't have water foundation, then they're not going to repair your foundation.
Really?
Yes.
Even if they dig it up?
Exactly.
So there's nothing in the policy that says we'll return your house to the condition prior?
Not if you don't have coverage.
Really? The things you learned when you were this old.
That's right. That's right.
That is so interesting. So here's one question, and I know we didn't talk about this, but
that's okay.
So if the roof gets blown off or a portion of it and water comes in to the house, how does that get covered?
So that would probably, the roof being damaged caused that.
Okay.
So that probably, now I'll put a disclaimer that every company is different.
True.
So there are some companies that will tell you in your, I know we hate to read it, but your policy declaration is going to tell you whether any damages caused by the roof being damaged is going to be covered or not.
Interesting.
And so if your roof gets blown off or it's leaking, those damages should be covered by the roof replacement.
But again, refer back to your doc page.
Exactly.
Or call you.
Or call me. Yep.
Tammy, you've done a great job. Lots of good information, and we hope that everybody is paying attention. I know more than anyone how important it is to have good insurance, whether it's wind, fire, or hail, you need to have it. And we're going to put Tammy's information up on the screen. Please give her a call if you're thinking about changing your policy, or if you just want to have a quote on what you currently have, and she can take care of you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. And tune in next week. We'll be on again next Wednesday, live on Facebook and on YouTube. Join us, and we'll see you then. That was great.
Was it good?
I think we nailed it.
I think we did too.